Hello, this is Macarena, and in this video I will be talking about certain aspects about the English literature. To begin with, how much do you know about the English literature? Well, it all started with the Old English language, which is the earliest form of English, and it comes from the Anglo-Saxons. It is said that Old English covered a period of 700 years from the Anglo-Saxon settlement of Britain in the 5th century to the late 11th century, sometime after the Norman invasion, period in which the greatest English poem, Beowulf, was written. It was written by an anonymous author, and it is the oldest surviving long poem in Old English. So, what is Beowulf about? The poem is set in Scandinavia, where Beowulf, a hero of the Geats, comes to the aid of Hrothgar, the king of the Danes, whose mead hall in Heorot has been under attack by a monster known as Grendel. After Beowulf slays him, Grendel's mother attacks the hall, but she is then also defeated. Victorious Beowulf goes home to Geatland and later becomes king of the Geats. After a period of 50 years, Beowulf faces a dragon and defeats it, but he results fatally wounded. Unfortunately, he dies, and after that, his attendants bury his corpse in a tumulus. As I've already mentioned, this piece of literature was written in Old English, but we should consider the fact that language evolves. Let's go back to the English history, when William the Conqueror invaded England. He and his people, known as the Normans, brought with them a new type of language. So, there was a kind of linguistic class division where the lower classes spoke English and the upper classes spoke French, resulting in an enormous amount of new words in the English vocabulary. Such period is known as Middle English. During this period, the Canterbury Tales, written by Geoffrey Chaucer, were published. Before diving into the story, I'd like to mention that Chaucer was the first person to have written the most recognized poems and stories in the language of the common people, medieval English. Chaucer's epic poem follows a party of 31 pilgrims, including himself, from the Tabard Inn in Southwark to St. Thomas a Becket's memorial at Canterbury Cathedral. To fill the time on the road, the landlord proposes that each pilgrim tell 2 stories on the way out and 2 on the way back. The best storyteller will be awarded with a complimentary meal when they return. Chaucer's poetry influenced and inspired many of Great Britain's authors, poets, and playwrights who follow him, including William Shakespeare. Shakespeare borrowed some of his stories from Chaucer's poetry. In particular, Shakespeare drew heavily on Chaucer's Troilus and Cressida for his play Troilus and Cressida. Shakespeare's play The Two Noble Kinsmen was similarly drawn from The Knight's Tale in the Canterbury Tales. So now, why do we study Shakespeare? Well, big issues related to emotions and feelings we deal with in our lives, and the ones which affect worldwide, are covered in his plays. Also, many TV series, movies, musicals, and books reproduce certain aspects about the stories of Shakespeare. It's important to say that Shakespeare's plays and comedies were written to be viewed on a stage, not read in any classroom, because it's better to see the plays performed on a stage than to read them in a book if we're trying to catch somebody's attention. The majority of Shakespeare's plays are set all around Europe, but mainly in Italy. Considering language, it is said that around 1,700 words and tons of phrases that we use nowadays were invented by Shakespeare. A considerable fact is that language changes and shapes every day, and it does not happen since now, but since many years ago. Nowadays, for example, we tend to shorten our words to shorten a text, but we should take into account that he did that too, following a different pattern unknown by the majority of us, which causes the understanding to be a little tricky. Shakespeare's plays have been a part of our culture since they were first published in the early 17th century, and they continue to be a part of popular culture. His impact on literature and the English language is still felt today. Shakespeare created characters who seem to come to life. They struggle with their emotions and act in the same way that we would do. He invented so many new phrases that are not easy to forget. Also, he's not afraid to employ analogies and idioms. Along his stories, he brings us witches, ghosts, fairies, laughter, fighting, horror, romance, and bloodshed. Themes in Shakespeare's stories are eternal and have remained relevant for centuries after his death.